Across the vast expanse of the Atlantic, a story is etched into the very fabric of history, a story of immense suffering, but also of indomitable spirit. This is the story of the transatlantic slave trade, a brutal chapter in human history that reshaped continents and forged new nations through unimaginable cruelty. It's a truth that is difficult to confront, but one we must understand to grasp the world we live in today. For over 4 centuries, from the 16th to the 19th century, more than 12 million African men, women, and children were forcibly captured, torn from their homes, and crammed into the dark, suffocating holds of slave ships. They were treated not as human beings, but as cargo, their value measured only in profit. This journey, known as the Middle Passage, was a nightmare of disease, starvation, and despair. It is estimated that nearly 2 million people died during this horrific voyage. Their bodies cast into the ocean, their stories lost to the waves. Those who survived the Middle Passage faced a new kind of hell in the Americas. They were sold at auction, families ripped apart, their names and identities stripped away. They were forced into a life of brutal, unpaid labor, primarily on plantations, growing sugar, cotton, tobacco, and coffee, commodities that fueled the economies of Europe and the Americas. The system of chattel slavery meant they were legally considered property to be bought, sold, and inherited. Life on the plantation was a relentless cycle of toil from sunup to sundown. Field hands endured backbreaking labor under the scorching sun, driven by the overseer's whip. The slightest infraction, or even just a perceived lack of effort, could result in savage punishments. Floggings, brandings, and other forms of torture were common methods used to enforce control and break the human spirit. Yet, amidst this constant threat of violence, enslaved people found ways to resist. Resistance took many forms. It was in the quiet, defiant acts of slowing down work or breaking tools. It was in the preservation of their culture through music, storytelling, in secret religious practices that blended African traditions with new realities. Songs and spirituals, often mistaken by slaveholders as simple work songs, carried coded messages of hope, sorrow, and plans for escape. It was in the courageous and perilous attempts to escape to freedom, following the North Star towards a life they could call their own. And it was in the organized, violent uprisings where enslaved people risked everything to fight back against their oppressors. Sending shockwaves through the slaveholding society, the enslaved were not a monolithic group. They came from diverse cultures and societies across West and Central Africa, from the Kingdom of Congo, the Oyo Empire, the Ashanti Confederacy, and countless other regions. They were farmers, artisans, soldiers, and scholars. They brought with them a rich tapestry of languages, beliefs, and skills, which they fought to preserve against all odds. This cultural resilience is a powerful testament to their strength, and it laid the foundations for the vibrant and unique African American culture that would emerge from the ashes of slavery. The institution of slavery was built and sustained by a complex web of economic interests and racist ideologies. To justify the inhumane practice, a pseudo-scientific narrative was constructed, falsely portraying people of African descent as inherently inferior, less intelligent, and better suited for servitude. These dehumanizing ideas were propagated through law, religion, and popular culture, creating a deep-seated racial hierarchy that poisoned the very soul of the nation. The wealth generated by slave labor was not a peripheral part of the economy. It was central. It built cities, funded universities, and financed the Industrial Revolution on both sides of the Atlantic. The entire global economy was deeply entangled with the profits derived from human bondage. The path to abolition was long and fraught with conflict. It was driven by the tireless efforts of enslaved people themselves, who never ceased to fight for their freedom, and by a growing movement of abolitionists, both black and white, who courageously spoke out against the moral atrocity of slavery. Figures like Frederick Douglass, an escaped slave who became a powerful orator and writer, and Harriet Tubman, the fearless conductor on the Underground Railroad, became powerful voices in the fight for liberation. The struggle culminated in the American Civil War, a bloody conflict that ultimately led to the emancipation of 4 million enslaved people. But the end of slavery did not mean the end of oppression. The promise of freedom was quickly betrayed. The period of Reconstruction, which offered a brief glimmer of hope for black political power and civil rights, was violently dismantled. In its place rose a new system of racial subjugation, Jim Crow. Through discriminatory laws, segregation, voter suppression, and the constant threat of lynching and terror, white supremacy was reasserted. The fight for true equality and justice was far from over. The legacy of slavery is not a relic of the past. It echoes into our present. It is visible in the persistent racial inequalities in wealth, housing, education, and the justice system. The systemic racism that was codified to justify slavery has mutated and evolved, but its roots run deep. Understanding this brutal truth is not about assigning guilt. It's about acknowledging a shared and painful history. It's about recognizing how the past has shaped the present and understanding our collective responsibility to dismantle the structures of inequality that remain. By confronting this history in its full, unvarnished complexity, we honor the millions whose lives were stolen or forever altered. We recognize their resilience, their humanity, and their enduring contributions to the world. It is a story of profound tragedy, but also one of incredible strength and the unyielding pursuit of freedom. Learning this history is the first step toward building a more just and equitable future for all. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to continue exploring the crucial stories that have shaped our world.